Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Pressbox Plus, a supplemental video to the Pressbox radio show. I'm your humble host and correspondent, Jim Steele, and we're going to talk about the SEC yesterday. It was a very limited schedule. I think there were only 8 teams in action, or 7 teams, if I'm not mistaken. I think Tennessee was the only one that played outside of conference. I may be wrong about that. But anyway, I know that Tennessee was the only one that played outside of conference. But it was an interesting day, all told, and we're going to talk about that. But we're also going to talk about some things that are going on sort of behind the scenes. And we'll get into that right now. By the way, we are off the air for another week on the Pressbox radio show, but when we come back, hopefully we'll have video. Right now, for another week, we have the Benton County United Way auction. If you want to listen to us on WRJB radio from 1 to 4 o'clock Central Time, you can listen to the auction, bid on some of the items. They've got a lot of baked goods there that are really good, and a lot of people have taken a lot of time to be part of that. So bid on that. You may change somebody's life with United Way. You never know. But that's what's going on, and we'll be back maybe October 31st. We may be on for Halloween, so I've got my Halloween mask ready to go. And we may be back on the 1st. I'm not sure exactly which, but we'll have it on for you. So anyway, we'll be back and hopefully on Facebook Live. I got to test it, make sure everything works. I'm not sure this new webcam will. The dynamics are different with my new laptop, so bear with us while we try to get all that figured out. Now, some news that I heard over the last couple of weeks, and I really haven't gotten into it a whole lot because I don't want to be one of those guys that deals in speculation. But there's talk about Lane Kiffin heading to Auburn or Nebraska. And both of them kind of make sense. You remember Tommy Tuberville left Ole Miss to go to Auburn. So it's not like that's without precedent. And they're not happy with Brian Harsin down there, even though Auburn's winning. Now, they haven't beaten anybody, and you could say the same thing about Ole Miss. Ole Miss was undefeated, but they really didn't have much of a resume to show for it. And that's probably what got them yesterday. They ran into a buzzsaw and didn't know how to react. But because LSU, what was it, 45-20 yesterday, LSU defeated Ole Miss down in Baton Rouge after Ole Miss jumped out to a 17-0 lead. Now, there was talk. I saw a website last night, and this guy said that, hey, Lane Kiffin was on a jet to Lincoln, Nebraska last Sunday. Well, I don't know that he was or wasn't. All I know is I looked it up, and there's a lot of aviation apps that you can look at, and you can call up the tail number of the airplane and find out where the plane has been and where it's gone and whatever. And yes, there was an airplane that flew from Lincoln, Nebraska to Oxford, Mississippi last Saturday afternoon, I should say, a week ago, and then left from Oxford to McKellar-Sipes Field in Jackson, Tennessee, and then turned around and went back to Oxford, and then flew back to Lincoln on Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, a week ago today. Now, there's some people that speculate that Lane Kiffin was on that plane. Otherwise, why is it that a plane would be going from Lincoln, Nebraska, all the way back to Oxford, Mississippi, and then taking it back up to Lincoln? And that's a good question. And I don't know that Lane Kiffin was on the plane, but there is, it's plausible that he could have been. I'm not saying he wasn't or would not have been, but it's plausible that they may be reaching out to him. But Sunday's a day where coaches break down film and they have their meetings and whatever. And so it would seem like if he's going to make that effort to go all the way to Nebraska and get there in the mid-morning, he'd probably be there all day, correct? So it wouldn't be a lot of time for him to break down film. Maybe that's why LSU beat Ole Miss. I don't know. And this is a little bit of a different Ole Miss team this year, as we've talked about. But the crazy thing is that plane has been in Idaho. It's been in Denver, Colorado. I was looking at its flight pattern for the month of October, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. I think its home base is out there somewhere in western Nebraska in the Mountain Time Zone. It's right on the Colorado border. So here's my question to those who are pontificating that Lane Kiffin was on that airplane. And he may very well have been. I'm not saying he wasn't. I don't know for sure. If Lane Kiffin went up to Lincoln, Nebraska, by the way, where Monty Kiffin, his dad, was born, so there's lineage there. How come there wasn't a return flight to Oxford with that same plane? Well, it's plausible they could have flown another plane back. But I didn't see any evidence of that. When I looked around at the Oxford airport, I didn't see any arrivals from Lincoln, Nebraska after the 16th. Now, I may have missed it. It's very possible. But I dare say Lane Kiffin would not be boarding a plane at the Lincoln, Nebraska airport because everybody knows who he is. And don't you know the media would be having a field day. I know that Nebraska is kind of interested in Lane Kiffin. They're interested in anybody that can get that program back off the ground. But I tapped the brakes on this a little bit. Lane Kiffin's got a job at Ole Miss, but I think he's probably nosing around. And I think he knows that probably 10 wins last year that he got is his ceiling there. I don't think he's ever going to be able to take down Alabama. And here's why. If you remember the college football days of 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when ABC had it once a week and you had Keith Jackson and Bill Schenkel and those guys doing the games, you might have had one game a week. Sometimes you had two. And it was always the good games. But who was always on? It was always Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Alabama, Auburn when they had Pat Sullivan, occasionally Tennessee. Tennessee was on a few times. Trying to think. UCLA was on a few times. But those were the teams that Arkansas, occasionally Texas A&M, those were the teams that you had on. And Ole Miss was, I don't ever remember a time when Ole Miss, I could be wrong. I've lived here, I started watching college football a lot back in like 1970. And of course, Auburn had Pat Sullivan, and there was John Capoletti at Penn State, and there was Johnny Rogers at Nebraska, and Jerry Taggy, and Kerry Jackson at Oklahoma that got in Oklahoma in all that trouble. Good quarterback, and I don't think it was his fault. But, Florida wasn't even on TV that often. And so, but Florida wasn't a brand name back then either. Florida's kind of a Johnny-come-lately to this whole party. That being said, Ole Miss was just not a TV brand. They might be like a Spur broadcast. If they did regional stuff. I remember in the fall of '76, I think it was, Kentucky and Maryland was the broadcast that we got here on ABC because there was no marquee game. So they did a whole bunch of regional games, and that's the one we saw, Kentucky and Maryland over at Byrd Stadium in College Park, Maryland. Kentucky, I think, won the game by 9 points or so. Good ball game. Not very compelling. It's a rainy day here that day, as I recall. But that's what they showed. And sometimes they would show Texas A&M and Michigan when they were highly ranked. And, USC and Notre Dame would always play and all that. You never really saw Ole Miss that often, unless it was one of those regional games. And keep in mind, there was only one network really that showed college football back then. Now that you got ESPN and Fox Sports and ABC and NBC and CBS and everybody's got their finger in the college football pie, now Ole Miss is on a lot more. But Ole Miss is not a national brand per se. I don't care, when you had Robert Kimdichie and you had Laquan Treadwell and all those other guys with the Hugh Freeze scandal. And they were number 5 in the nation recruiting, and you knew something was kind of screwy with that. And Hugh Freeze wound up walking from Ole Miss, or he was shown the door actually. But the point is, Ole Miss is a very tough place to recruit to. Same for Mississippi State. And the fact that Dan Mullen did so well there is remarkable, given what a disaster he was at Florida. I mean, Mississippi State was number one in the nation for about 5 weeks. Now, can you fancy that? And then when you think about what happened with Ole Miss that in 2014, the first college football playoff poll had Ole Miss as number 14. So things were rolling pretty good for both those Mississippi schools, but it's very hard to recruit football players to those places because, one, their stadiums are very small by comparison by SEC standards, even though Ole Miss has really done a great job in expanding their stuff, but I think it still only holds 67,000. And Scott Field at Mississippi State doesn't hold that much more, if it does hold more. So Lane Kiffin's going to have problems there, and so he's probably looking for greener pastures. Auburn is a brand name. And I don't mean any disrespect to Mississippi State or Ole Miss. Nebraska is struggling but can be a brand name again. And even though they're terrible, they still sell out every week. Primarily because there's nothing else to do in Lincoln, I guess. So it's very plausible that Lane Kiffin could be headed. He could be on the move, but I wouldn't get too crazy about that. And seeing some jet tail number from Lincoln, Nebraska in Oxford, it could be any number of things. There could be, who knows, family people, I don't know. And why it was at McKellar-Sipes Field for a few hours, I don't know. So tap the brakes on that. I don't know where Lane Kiffin's going, but I think his days on the Ole Miss sideline are probably going to reach an expiration date pretty soon. Texas A&M, what is going on there? South Carolina, for the first time in school history, beat Texas A&M 30-24 last night. Jumped out to a big lead and then held off A&M late in the ball game. A&M's offense is a mess. Jimbo Fisher needs to turn loose of that offense. He's got personnel that can run a successful offense, but I don't know what's going on. Jimbo Fisher, we saw what happened at Florida State. He had a good run there for a while with Bobby's kids, and then he had his own for a while, and he had another good run, and then had their first losing season in 28 years or whatever it was. And now Florida State is still recovering from the dumpster fire that he left. Mike Norvell is slowly trying to build that back up, but it's still a slow process. It's better than it was last year. And I think Norvell might have earned a reprieve this year, but I don't know what's going on with Jimbo Fisher. And a lot of people say, well, he's on the hot seat, but they're going to have to pay him, $85 million buyout. And it's guaranteed. It is guaranteed. There's language in there that if he goes to another place and gets a job, a lot of times that cancels the contract. Not with this contract. Jimbo Fisher had a good agent and a good attorney. And so Texas A&M is on the hook for Jimbo Fisher probably at least another 2 or 3 years. They're going to have to hold their nose and deal with it. Jimbo Fisher has not reached that 9-point. He's got a 9-win plateau, and that's about as high as he's gotten at Texas A&M. And it's just, and I don't know that it's going to get any better. I don't know that it'll get any better. So anyway, that's what's going on over there. A&M just getting hammered, and I think it's because Jimbo Fisher won't turn loose of the offense. Now, about Tennessee and being back in the mix and it being good for college football, there was a guy on, I don't remember who it was, but had a vlog the other day that talked about, I'm tired of you Tennessee fans saying that college football is better. Well, it's not college football. It's not Tennessee fans. It's college football fans who are saying that college football is better when Tennessee is good. He said Tennessee's been bad and college football was fine. He's right. He's right. College football survived without Tennessee since 2008, 2009. And it survived without Florida State, and it survived without Nebraska, and it survived the impasse with Alabama from 95 until 2006. It survived with it's surviving with Notre Dame being relatively irrelevant since 1989. 1991, actually, really, when they played for the national championship in back-to-back seasons. Didn't win it, but they played for it. College football has been fine, but why can't it be both? College football will survive, but I do think it's better when Tennessee is better. I do think college football is better when Texas is better. I do think college football is better when Florida is better, or when Notre Dame is better. And I don't understand that thought process. Anyway, back to the SEC. My apologies to Missouri. I have said that's the worst team in the SEC since the season started. I was wrong. Vanderbilt has now earned that mantle. Missouri beat Vanderbilt yesterday in Columbia, 17-14. A dog of a game, but give Missouri its due. It won. So what can you say? And, of course, we know what happened with Tennessee. 65-24 over UT Martin, which was expected. And somebody asked, well, why did they play UT Martin for homecoming? Well, who else would you play? Well, they always pick on weaklings to play in homecoming. And I'm not saying, I don't mean that disrespectfully for UTM. But here's the thing, folks. Who doesn't do that? And I pointed out, too, that University of Tennessee has played Florida and Georgia and Miami for homecoming in the past. And back when Miami was decent, when they had Kellen Winslow Jr. and all that crew. They played them for homecoming. And Fulmer once told me sometimes they ask him who he wants, and sometimes they don't. And that's just kind of the way it works. But everybody schedules, a so-called cream puff to get a win in front of the donors. That's what they want. They want homecoming to leave the players with a good taste in their mouths, the fans and the donors and the administration with a good taste in their mouths, because that's when everybody comes back. So, say what you will about that. It was, I thought it was a good game for Tennessee. And who else you're going to have in there? I mean, who else is going to play? Who are you going to schedule? I guess you could have scheduled Missouri for homecoming. You didn't want to schedule Kentucky. So anyway, I don't know. It was kind of nuts. And everybody schedules a dog for homecoming. That's just the way it goes. But yeah, Tennessee wins. Missouri wins. Ole Miss gets hammered by LSU. South Carolina capsizes Texas A&M, and I think Texas A&M is on to a 6-6 season or worse. And then Alabama, a big win yesterday. I think it was 30-6 over Mississippi State. 4 penalties for 20 yards. I think Mississippi State got the message, and they looked a little better. I think they played a little better against not a great, but not a bad Mississippi State team. So, like I said, here we are. We're 7 games into the season, and we've got 5 games left. And Tennessee has, I think, 3 on the road? Is that right? They go to Georgia. They go to Vanderbilt. They got Kentucky and Missouri at home. Anyway, whatever it is, there's 5 games left, and it's hard to believe that the season has gone by so fast. But that's where we are in Tennessee, number 3 in the nation. Still looking good. Join me on Twitter. My handle is Steele Sports, Steele Sports. On Facebook, I'm Jim Steele, Steele with an E on the end of it. Send me a friend request. If you'd like, go to WRJBradio.com if you want to listen to my show and you're outside the listening area for my radio show. I'm on 4 to 6 every day, Monday through Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central Time. But I'm not on this week. I'll be back on next week, so check me out then. And I'll be continuing these Pressbox Plus supplements probably until the foreseeable future. And plus we'll have video back on the Pressbox radio show when we return in November. So we're excited about that. We're going to step things up a little bit moving forward, and hopefully we'll have a lot of fun for you guys as we continue this. So I hope you enjoy it. Continue with the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. tell your friends about this, share it, and I'd really appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody tuning in today, logging in today, and watching. Go out and have a great rest of the weekend, and we'll see you back here probably tomorrow on Monday. I may do another video, but check soon. I'll keep you posted on the Pressbox page, and I'll keep you posted on my own personal Facebook page as well. And you can read my column in the Carroll County News Leader, the Camden Chronicle, in the Dresden Enterprise each week if you're of a mind. Folks, thanks for joining me today. I'm Jim Steele. This has been Pressbox Plus. So long, everyone.